We are super excited to bring you this bonus episode showcasing 7 speakers in 7 days.
This episode is a partnership between the Data in Education and Building a Culture of Collaboration podcasts, with episodes being released through each podcast.
The bonus series showcases speakers who will be presenting at the June 2025 Data and Education Virtual Summit happening June 10th and 11th. We encourage you to search Data and Education Summit June 2025 to learn more and register. You can also check out the show notes for additional links.
So, Jess, we're excited to dive into this episode, so let's get started.
Welcome, educators. Whether you are a spreadsheet, dashboard, all things data fanatic like myself, or you break out into a cold sweat just hearing the words data meeting, it's okay. I've got you. My name is Jessica Lean, and I'm your host for this podcast, Data and Education. I'm also the founder of Data Informed Impact, where I work with schools and educators all over to get rid of some of that overwhelm and make things a little bit easier for them to make the best decisions for their students. We'll be talking about all things data culture, data literacy, and data visualization. Let's get started. Welcome. I'm Jessica Lane, host of the Data and Education podcast.
And we are Curtis and Lorna Houston, hosts of the Building a Culture of Collaboration podcast.
So, in today's bonus episode, we're joined by Dr. Sarah Richter, an instructional coach from Springfield City Schools with over 2 decades in diverse educational settings. Sarah's unique journey into data analysis, sparked at a pivotal moment in her career, has fueled her impactful work supporting teachers across all subjects. She's now using those skills to drive measurable success to help educators truly reflect on their practice. So welcome to this joint podcast venture, Sarah. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I'm also super excited to have another Cincinnati representative in the house. Now it's like 2 Cincinnati, 2 Canada. So
we'll
balance it down.
And we heard, for those that are listening, you're not able to see that Sarah is in a classroom background, but that most of the students are out today enjoying an amusement park while you get to tend to back at the school.
Hey, I always have plenty to do, so it's okay.
Yes, I'm
not a complaint.
So, Sarah, thank you so much for being able to join. And we know that little bio at the start doesn't really do justice to the work that you have done and are currently doing. Can you just share a little bit about your background in education with us?
Sure. I'm a 20-year high school math teacher. I have a sprinkling of college math in there as well. I spent 13 years at a rural school in Kentucky, and then I crossed the river into Cincinnati, Ohio, where I joined a school that was the exact opposite of my previous 13 years. So that rural school was very homogenous, maybe 800 students. This other school was urban, very diverse. It's actually one of the most diverse in the entire state of Ohio. It was about a third white, third black, third Hispanic. So I just jumped right in. Thank goodness everybody was very welcoming. It's exciting to learn that I was adaptable. That's what I learned. I've been there, yeah. And it was there that after about 4 years of being in the high school teaching upper level mathematics, my goal was to actually go into administration. I was a bit of a late bloomer in that regard. It was the 20 years of teaching that I decided to do that. And I wanted to get into curriculum instruction. At that time, the district was building a new school. So while earning those degrees and my licensure, I ended up going with my supervisor and mentor to actually start a new school as the lead teacher for that same district, which is a really awesome and interesting experience. I finished up my degrees in educational leadership and in curriculum instruction, left the classroom after 20 years. And in the last 4 years, 3 of those were spent as an instructional coach, 2 not in my own area. I never even got to be an instructional coach of math until this year. So that was fun. And then there was a year off to build a school. So I also built another school in there.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I found that being a principal, because they needed a principal too, has never been my goal. But building the school itself and then passing it on to somebody was wonderful. And
Wow.
so I am back at being a curriculum and instructional coach and absolutely loving it.
Our bio absolutely did not do justice. And
Right.
Sarah, prior to the episode, you also mentioned a book that you've written as well.
I did. It was, oh, sorry, there's the bell.
If not for anything, it's authentic.
Bell sound.
Those were not chairs bells. That was definitely just regular bells.
They're also not dogs barking, so we're
Not
good.
dogs
Right? I'm not going to spare anyone. But so yeah, I ended up when I finished my dissertation, it was over COVID's effects on SLICE students, which is students with limited and interrupted formal education. My kids at the first school that I helped start were all from Guatemala, non-English speaking. So the book was an iteration of my dissertation without all the boring parts, and it was just not quite all the data, that kind of thing. And it was in collaboration with the University of Cincinnati Humanities Department, where it's called Ohio Under COVID. So everybody run out and buy that on Amazon. I did chapter 7.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, that's super exciting. Well, I love the avenue of curriculum and instruction and the instructional leadership side of things. And that was one of my first steps into instructional leadership too, was really focusing on new curriculum and helping teachers to understand how to navigate that new piece.
And I saw Jess's eyes light up with the math teacher from Ohio.
Yeah. There's some connections there too.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, when did you realize the value of data, and were you always a fan of being able to use that data to inform your next steps?
I think I've always, and being mathematically with that math background, I think that just is something I gravitate towards. So yes, oh, there's the other bell. We shouldn't have.
This is how we know
For
this
half an hour.
podcast is legit.
Yeah.
And we've got people off the
Actually
street.
recording
Yeah.
from
School. You were warned. I'm so sorry. What was the question?
Well, just thinking about the value of data, and have you always been highly engaged in the use of data, or was that something that came to you at some point?
So yes, mathematically, with that mathematical background, I tend to gravitate towards data anyways. Back in the day, we had to gather all our own data, do our own item analysis. And I think what the problem with that was is we spent so much time, we as teachers spent so much time gathering the data and trying to organize it that we didn't have enough time to actually start using it in a lot of cases. I know I felt that way leading a math department. And I found that I could make the changes because I could follow the data that I had. But the best way I led at that time was enforcing practices that got the best results, and then other people modeled themselves after me. So it was more leading by example at that point. Nowadays, we have all these programs that do that item analysis for us. So we just have to know where to look. And now we can get into the nitty gritty of how do we use that data and make decisions. And for me, I think I really realized that when it's probably especially when I was doing the department chair stuff, where I was having to lead the department through ACT scores, where are our deficits, where are our strengths,
Yeah.
AP calculus, all those things, and I really dived into where are the strengths, where are the deficits, where can I make decisions, and that started that guidance with the rest of the department.
Mhm. And it's so true. that now with some of the technology and
Oh,
the
yeah.
different tools that we have available to us, it's so easy to get to the, okay, so what is this now saying to us and what could we do about it? Which are the two most important questions, not the, oh, we have to go through this data and analyze it to
Do you
actually.
remember filling out the sheets one tear at a
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was awful.
Everybody comes in with their highlighters and
Yeah.
we start drawing it out.
I was so glad when they finally had those bubble sheets you could run through the scanner. And
Yeah.
Then you have to make sure that they're all like accurately filled out and everything. So it all has its own little tedious parts of it. But so we've talked a little bit about your background in data, but we haven't really gotten too deep into the fact that you also have that skill set of being able to analyze the data and dive a little bit deeper into just the like the spreadsheet, the background aspects of it. So can you tell us more about what led you through the journey that you've gone through in order to obtain that background and that skill set?
Um, so I do have a background in data analytics, and through Jessica, bless her heart, she's been putting up with me coming to her classes to learn how to do more data visualization and using Looker Studio.
And I love having
I've got something to show you. You'd be so proud. Um, but anyways, so I realized as this was the second time around being starting a school, I was also the principal at that time, and I was just overwhelmed with the way I wanted to lead the school and how I didn't have enough time to do all the things I needed to do to lead it efficiently. And so I wanted to collect the data, and you get reports from everywhere, but nothing ever seems to be in the same place and matching up at the same time when you need it to.
Yeah.
And so by the end of that year, I was just worn out, and I wanted to know how to make my life more efficient in regards to the data. So I actually enrolled in a data analytics course through Coursera. It was an 8 weeks course, and I just learned. And it has been a lifesaver ever since. Now I am much more efficient in gathering that data so that I can now use it just the same way as we have programs that do that for item analysis and things like that. I have that ability on my own to do it. And I have continued that to this day.
So
Yeah, you're so right. And that it just helps save so much time if you have that skill set. Just be careful that you don't let too many people know, because eventually you end up with way more hats.
I'm really good at saying no.
That's a good thing. You have to teach them what
can you teach us that?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother course.
Yeah. Hey, Sarah, I was intrigued with you'd kind of just mentioned offhand of started an instructional coach, and it was a couple years before I actually started to do it in my key discipline area of math. So I'm really interested because we've had this conversation with a few different people of, when it comes to the use of data, well, math people get it. They get how to utilize it, but you've had to work with other disciplines. I'd love to hear what are your thoughts on what you've observed around how different disciplines or subject areas approach the data, and what have been some of the unique challenges or insights that you've seen from working with different teachers in different subject areas.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I know in my experience, using the data and making decisions is actually it's much more based on personality, I think, where if you have a growth mindset and you're willing to be reflective about the data, you will make decisions and make progress. My job is just to make that data understandable for the teachers. So in that regard, that's where I find more differentiation depending on the different departments. My more ELA based, social studies based, they tend to like the visualizations, the graphs and things like that.
Yeah.
My math and science people are completely comfortable with the raw data. They like to have filters in it, which is where the data dashboards have really come into play for me. I recently made one for iReady and OST data where teachers could filter out their subject or their classes, their IEPs, that kind of thing, so they can make comparisons easily. And they just really glommed onto that. So it all kind of just depends on how their thinking process is. Are they wanting more of a visual representation compared to just the raw data in a spreadsheet? And then their growth mindset will tell you if they can make decisions and be reflective.
It's
I think that's
interesting.
such a good point. And it reminds me of when I first started working with teachers on going through like a reteaching plan, and I actually had there's a little chart on the spreadsheet that shows the percentage of students in each of the different categories. And I had one teacher that was like, I can't look at it. She was our teacher. She's like, I can't look at it because it's numbers. So I took like a whole day mapping out a formula that would put it all into words for her at the top of the page. How I don't think it was necessarily an aspect of numbers versus letters or differentiation in terms of how it's being presented. I think it goes back to that growth mindset, and that goes back to what I always say. You have to do the pre-work and making sure that you're building that culture of being able to look at data and gain value from data prior to even stepping into something like a reteaching plan.
hmm Yeah. So, Sarah, when we think about the coaching that you're doing with teachers and really knowing that, as you just shared, the request to look through data or to analyze that data coming in different formats, how do you build relationships with teachers to get to that space where you understand them to that point where you can impact those coaching conversations as well?
So I start off coaching everybody in the same exact way. I want to get in and actually see them in their environment. Everybody has very different styles, very different personalities, and I need to figure out what that is. That way, when I get to the point where I want to make some suggestions for their practices, I can give them options that I think will most fit with what they like, and then they can pick from there. That seems to work the best for me. Now, when initially go in to those classrooms, I have an actual form. I think I got this off of Etsy from another coach that was selling it. I wish I could find it and give it to people so she can make some more money, but she deserves it. So it's basically just a form that I fill out where it's what's the teacher doing versus what's the student doing. I can jot down some discussion, follow up comments and questions for later, that kind of thing. And sometimes I actually record it audio as well so that I can re-listen. It kind of depends on what I'm going into.
Mm.
Um, and then I get back to my office and a reflection. I also have a check sheet that just breaks things down into categories. There's an engagement category, an instructional practices category, and a classroom management category with like 10 or more check boxes. And I just check them off. The area that has the least amount of checks is the area that I tend to guide those initial coaching conversations with goal setting. And we set a goal from there, and I'll usually come in a couple more times informally to watch again, and then we start an actual coaching rotation. And as we fill in the check marks, usually we'll end up filling in things from other areas too. So if we're working on instructional practices, usually the classroom management starts to fill in, or the engagement starts to fill in too. So, and it's really cool to show those check marks over time. After, I don't know, like a semester, I'll show them what my initial check marks were. I don't usually show them right at first, and then I show them where they've grown to afterwards, and they're like, "That's so cool." And it just gets them all excited. It's again, and it works for any subject area. You're just looking at the check marks. You can count check marks no matter what subject area you are.
The beauty of
That's
that
awesome.
is, again, you've now got some data that can show
Yeah.
growth, and we can celebrate, which is then just fuel
Yes.
the next level of growth. I was with the school yesterday where they were looking at student data, but it was very similar where this is where the data was at the first time and they had color coded it. And then we went and looked again and color coded it and just visually, like, just like you said, we see more check marks. Well, in this case, they saw way more greens than reds and yellows when they were using just a simple red, yellow, green um, visualization, color coding on it. And like, you could just see the two data sets up beside each other and just went, wow, whatever we're doing.
Sometimes keeping it
working.
simple is the nicest way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and having
Absolutely.
that checklist of things is also making it really visible
Yeah,
too,
and
and
measurable.
clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to give a quick shout out because I've seen a lot of those checklists before, and where I saw them was in Knight's book, the Impact Cycle. He has a ton of checklists like that, and I've used them before in my instructional coaching as well, and found the same thing. That is just such a nice way to kind of like level things out for all subjects. You've mentioned being able to see measurable success in iReady and Procore performance. So, how do you help the teachers connect the dots between the data that you're analyzing together and then the specific instructional shifts that lead to those more tangible gains for the students?
That's a really great question. And I think it really gets to the heart of making data meaningful is where are we actually seeing the results? Are we getting the results that we want? It doesn't just happen. It has intentional shifts in instruction that are driven by what we're learning together from the data. When I sit down with teachers, I don't just point out the scores. Yes, you can look at the scores, obviously, and every single teacher I've ever known wants to look at every single kid and how they did every time. Um, but we need to actually look at the patterns. With my current group, they're pretty reluctant. They came from a coach that they just absolutely loved. And I think they hated me just because they loved her so much. So I've just really taken the time to get to know them, show up for them, and get them just thinking about the patterns that they have. And so we tend to dig into our common assessments and really make sure that the instruction is meeting the rigor of the questions. So what I do with them is like we'll pull up our common assessments and we'll take a look at each of the questions where it fits into our lesson and or excuse me our unit, and then does our instructional practices that we're planning meet the rigor of this question. So sometimes that's yes, sometimes that's no. So that's where we're at this year. It's really aligning the content to where we want our rigor to be. Um, Another thing that I've been doing with one of the teachers in particular is we're really looking at practical and targeted instruction within the classroom. So she's been using small groups where she'll make like a small 3 to 4 questions formative assessment of the items that she really, really wants to make sure that they know before they get to the real deal. And then she and her intervention specialists work together to divvy those kids up to either get the remediation they need or take the time to get the enrichment that they could go forward with after they take that little test and within small groups. And the last one that I shouldn't say the last, the very first one that she did, she started off with, I don't know, it was about 50-50 where some of the kids were um, in that enrichment group and 50% of the kids were in the I need remediation group. And by the end of that, so within one classroom period, she had increased everybody to probably about 95% of those kids knowing the targeted issues that she wanted them to know. Maybe she said about one in each class still didn't know, so they would need some extra help. But it was a great way to get caught up for them too. We have a high non-attendance problem, so it was a great way for them to get caught up if they had been absent as well. So kind of hitting 5 birds with one stone.
So it reminds me a lot of when I was a teacher, and I talk about this often about how, I did use some data and spreadsheets and stuff, but using data looks different for every teacher. And there were times when I would give a lesson and then do one of those short assessments. And I mean, we talk a lot about tech, but this was, we just did on paper and pencil, and they would hold it up in the air as they were finished. I would trade them for another assignment, and I would collect them and put them in between my fingers. And like, one group is perfectly great. They know everything they need to know to move on. Other group, tiny mistakes. And then the last group needs reteaching altogether. And so as I was going around, I would touch base with the ones that had tiny mistakes, move them up to the pile that says that they know. And then towards the end, I would pull the rest of the students back to the back and have a little bit of small group instruction with those particular students that needed it. And that's
Mhm.
using data. And it doesn't involve tech, it doesn't involve a spreadsheet. But it's using data to inform your instruction, which is exactly what we talk about all the time.
Well, the
Um,
cool thing in
Go ahead. Go ahead.
the cool thing in this case is that our district has now gone to common formative assessments 2 or 3 times per unit. So in this upcoming year, I can actually use her as an example and have her guide that small group instruction with those small formative assessments. They're all 3 or 4 questions. So
Yeah.
she gets to lead the whole entire thing. I'm not the one leading it. She does it. So yeah.
Yeah, so perfect. Right. Awesome. So, beyond your coaching, you also have a background in the research and writing that we've talked about a little bit. So, how does that academic lens influence then your practical approach to data, curriculum, and supporting those diverse student populations within your district now?
Um, so this question is going to go back to actually helping to design the school for the Cincinnati district. It was a partial slice school, slice hub. Um, I when I was helping build that school, I was just the lead teacher at that time, and so I had to figure out how to build a curriculum that was appropriate for an algebra classroom, high school students that were recently from Guatemala that had a max of a 6th grade education. They also don't use negative numbers. So, for those of you with a math background, you might be laughing at the ridiculousness of that entire situation.
I didn't
So,
even know that was a thing. That's wild. That's interesting.
Interesting.
well, I didn't know either until I dug in.
Right.
And imagine trying to teach like real world negatives. Like you can't use negative temperatures.
Right.
They don't have
Mhm.
negative temperatures in Guatemala. So I was learning on the fly. So I ended up having to do a lot of cultural background research to feel like I could even dig into some backward lessons design because I really had to meet those kids where they at, plus raise them up to being able to do algebra. So I mean, I was picking and choosing hard. Um, and so that research really drove the curriculum in my class. And it also helped. This is once again that one of those situations where as a lead teacher or previously as department chair, my actions were helping other people, in this case of other contents, take the initiatives and model the same type of stuff for their own classrooms because they were in a bind too. None of us had ever taught EL before. None of us spoke Spanish. It was an adventure and it was awesome. Let me tell you. But I think that was the most practical aspect of how I really started using that research to drive what I was doing in the classroom, and then that later drove what I did when I built a virtual school. I had to really drive into what are best practices for virtual students because that's an entirely different thing than your regular everyday classroom. So, and I've just continued doing those practices. As I've been an instructional coach in areas that are other than my own. I keep doing that research. If I don't know it, I just keep trying. I had a physics teacher that needed to build better rockets. I don't know anything about rockets, and so
I
I
can't say
dug
I
in.
do either.
I dug in. We made a wonderful lesson together, and he had the best rockets he had ever had in the last 5 years. So, but it took the research and the time and the planning. I can't just wing it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it also takes that passion for learning, right? And
Mhm.
I think that when you look at the people who are most successful when it comes to teaching, it's because they love learning and they're able to then, push that forward to the other teachers and to the students and it just together be on that journey through learning all the things, even the things about rockets. So
And are we coming through now? We had a little bit of a internet glitch
yes,
there, but
you are back. Yes, we're
yay,
happy to have
awesome.
you back.
We heard everything, and even though we might have
Oh,
been
good.
paused visually, we were nodding the entire time.
Wonderful.
So,
That's a
Sarah,
very slow nod.
yeah,
But see the
yeah.
movement.
So, Sarah, as we wrap up, what would be for anyone that's listening for this or anticipating your session at the Data and Education Summit that we'll get Jess to share here in a little bit? How else can anyone listening or viewing get a hold of you?
So I am available under LinkedIn, under Dr. Sarah K. Richter. My professional writings are under those names, that name too. So that's the easiest way to get hold of me. You can also catch me at my email, richtersk at SCSD, that's Springfield City School District, OH for Ohio.org.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Perfect. And just to share out that you are going to be presenting about enhancing instructional leadership through diagnostic data approaches. And for those of you that have tickets, if you don't, go grab one, hurry. You are going to be able to see that session on June 11th, our second day, at 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you're not in the Eastern time zone, you got to do a little bit of math there, but everyone's a math person. So it's totally fine. You got this.
Yeah. And it's
Awesome.
not just for your instructional coaches. I mean, it's perfect for principals who want to go in without an OTES rubric, so they're not so intimidating. You know,
Yes.
make some real changes at the smallest level.
I love it.
Awesome, Sarah. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to further learning with you and wish you all the best as you continue forward.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That was such a great conversation with Sarah and just hearing her experiences and being able to share how data plays a role in all of those. The one thing that I loved that she shared was how she takes the data and manipulates it in a way that is more understandable for a certain perspective or for certain teachers. So she might arrange the ELA data in a different way than she does for the math
Yeah.
teachers, which is
But
really appealing to and attending to those learning tendencies.
I think
right?
that really points to the how do we make it accessible
Yeah.
and visual
Yeah.
for whoever needs to see it.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing I love about Sarah is that that passion for learning is just
Yeah.
so evident. I mean, it was evident throughout the entire episode. We talked about how she wanted to learn more about her students, how she wanted to learn about opening the schools. There's
Yeah.
something else too
Rockets.
that I was thinking. Rockets.
Yes.
Yeah.
No matter what, take on any challenge,
But
right?
Yeah.
I think that's such a critical mindset. And she pointed
is.
towards it of coming into looking at data through a growth mindset
Right.
of, okay, what is this telling me? What can I learn from this? What are my next steps? And how
Mhm.
do I approach that? It again, we've heard this idea of mindset being connected to effective
Yep.
utilization of data over and over and over again.
Yeah. But before we close out, I just have to we have to circle back because I brought up the dogs barking
Yeah.
for the bell, and people are going to be wondering why I said that. So just give a very brief overview of that story, Chris.
Absolutely.
Great
And
one.
shout out to the amazing team at Fairview High School. I was in their school, and in the last 2 days, they've been testing bells in their intercom system. And I found out that one of the bell sounds that could be put through for their bell schedules was dogs barking. And there was some lots of giggling happening around the school. And then a little bit of a, we're not going with that, are we? As when the bell that would normally be the doon, doon, doon was instead and teachers and students who if any had ever had a run-in with a dog that was not a favorable one, all of a sudden,
Trauma-inducing.
trauma being triggered all over the school.
Oh
So
my goodness.
yeah, if you are a school with dogs barking as your bell, great on you. I don't think it's going to happen at Fairview High School.
Okay. Probably not. Okay, well, one more thing that I do want to make sure that we point out is that Sarah, once again, is going to be presenting at our summit. So make sure that you get tickets. We'll have the link in the show notes. And just a quick reminder, I'm going to say this every few episodes. You get a free copy of Curtis and Lorna's book, Collaborative Response, if you get that live and replay ticket. So jump in there. That'll be super valuable when it comes to the keynote that Curtis will be giving during the summit. So definitely get a ticket.
Well, and it's been interesting through this series of I'm intrigued to go and listen to each one of our speakers now, just to dig in deeper and, see
Hear a
some of the,
little bit more.
real practical steps for a lot of the concepts they're sharing.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right. Until the next one, Jess, take care and we will see you again soon.
See you later.
See you soon.
Well, my friend, did you enjoy it? I'm really hoping the answer is yes. And like every other podcast out there, I'm going to ask you for some big favors. Can you please make sure that you're subscribed? You don't want to miss the next episode, I promise. And then if you could leave a review, that'd be awesome too. If you're on YouTube, by the way, there's this great thing that you can do where you just go to the box underneath the video and type in your thoughts, ideas, wishes, hopes, dreams, and hit comment. And it shows up under the video. It is public, just a warning. But I'd really love for you to do that. Share with me. What did you think about the episode? Or what are your dreams in life? It's okay. You can really leave any kind of comment. And I'll do my best to respond. Above all else, I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.